It all begins here, right? It's the mindset. I think maybe because of our cultural conditioning or whatever that may be, I think the mindset itself is finance is too complex. No, it's not. The first thing we need to do is start to learn, start to invest. Very important. Have your own bank account and make sure that there's always some funds for emergency in that bank account. I think it's time to sit down with our families and have the conversations about money.
Welcome to the Project W podcast, our very first episode. So, this is where we're going to talk about women, wealth, wisdom, without filters, fear, or the fine print. I'm Erica, and this podcast, came together for one simple reason, and that was to make conversations about money normal, to make them human, and importantly, empowering for women across India and beyond. So, this is not about financial advice. Let me just say that at the get-go. This is real talk. It's stories, it's lessons, mistakes. Importantly, it's turning points so that you feel confident enough to ask those questions, to seek guidance, and to make those smarter money choices, of course, on your own terms. So, today's guest is somebody who embodies exactly what Project W stands for. Let me just share that she grew up in a small town in India with just one school. So, no financial legacy, no insider networks, that's for sure. And today, she operates in the heart of the global money markets. I'm so excited to bring to you our very first guest today. It's our first episode of Project W, and we're going to be sharing a story that isn't just about success. It's about resilience. It's about the invisible battles. It's about that quiet courage it takes to claim your space in rooms that perhaps weren't built for you. Sandeepa Vig has built wealth platforms across India and the US, scaled billion-dollar businesses, raised capital, advised family offices, and does it all whilst navigating motherhood and some serious health challenges, cultural expectations, of course, and leadership pressures. But, more than the titles, she brings something rare, and that's honesty. Honesty about what it really takes to build financial power as a woman. Sandeepa, welcome to Project W. So excited. Our inaugural show, first episode, and thrilled to have you on. Thank you for coming.
It is an honor. Thank you, Erica. It's really an honor to be here. It was a coincidence that I met you while I was in India, and I'm so excited to be doing this. This is really awesome.
Well, we're going to start with the origin story. It's something very special, something that needs to be shared. So I'm going to hand it over to you. Talk to us about your backstory.
Sure. My story is from very humble beginnings. I was born in a very conservative North Indian family. My father was a, typical North Indian person, where women were not allowed to work. So he came from that backdrop. He was a self-made guy. He lost his father very early on. So he really, learned everything himself. So that was his background. And it's important to know the background because that will, talk about why I think the way I think. Meanwhile, my mother was from a more forward-looking sort of a background. She came from an army background. Her father was in the army and, she moved a lot. And her parents had really believed in educating their kids. So there were 3 daughters and 1 son. And all of them were postgraduates. In fact, my mother was a double MA. And both of her sisters were working. One is a dental surgeon and the other is a professor in a very prestigious college in Chandigarh. But when my mother got married, she was a teacher. But when she got married, my father asked her to stop working. He said, you can work. As long as you work without money, I'm okay. So very early on, I saw, not knowing then what it meant, that marriage equals financial surrender. And of course, my mother refused to work without money. She said, I'd rather then take care of my home and my kids. So that was the backdrop. And because my father was in a job where it required him to move to various places, I was in small places like Khanba, which is in Madhya Pradesh, then a place called Pachora, which is actually in Maharashtra, close to a bigger town called Jalgaon. But initially, we were based in Pachora. My sister was sent to a boarding school because she was a little older. I was younger. I was 4 years old. So my mother chose to just put me in that school. There was only one school. It was so small that, when one of the teachers was on leave, I was the head girl and I had to back up as a teacher in fourth grade. It was so small. So it was very
Jeez.
challenging. And my mother, did not want to send me to boarding school that early on. But as I grew up and went on to fifth grade, I went to the boarding school. And that's when my world actually opened up. I saw a different because there were students from various parts of India, some from countries overseas, and I realized that there was a bigger world outside. And that's when I realized that I cannot be living a life in a small town. Not that I don't think it's important, but I did not want to relegate myself to a life that was confined within the bounds of just a marriage and kids. I wanted more. And I realized very early on, I'm a person who always wants to challenge the status quo. I realized that very early on. So when I turned 18, of course, after I finished sixth grade, my mother moved us all back so that the family could be together to Jalgaon while my father continued to work in Pachora. But once I was 18, and I know there was expectation that we get married around that age. And while most girls my age were either eloping to get married to a boy, my sister and I was very scared of my father. So, but I became a rebel suddenly. Me who could not speak a word against my dad, I said, Dad, I want to go to Bombay to continue to study. So, in a way, my sister and I eloped to Bombay, not for a man,
Yeah.
but to study. And
But
that's
for a
how
career.
yes, for a career.
I love that though. You're eloping for a career.
Yes.
Okay.
For a bigger purpose, I saw a bigger life. Yes, I wanted marriage. Yes, I wanted the kids, but I also wanted something else. I knew that there was something bigger within me that I could achieve.
Okay. So 18 was that pivotal age where you figured that, this is it. I think there is a bigger world out there and it's time for me to go and grab it.
Hmm. So that brought us to Bombay. We lived in a hostel for a while, but eventually, and I'm really grateful because no matter what either of my parents thought, they really, when it came down to it, supported our education. And so, lock, stock, and barrel, the family moved to Bombay. And that's when the journey began. And I'm very proud of the life that I was eventually able to create in Bombay. Of course, fraught with many challenges, it wasn't easy, but it was something I wanted. So, when you go for your passion, somehow you find a way to figure it out.
Right. And speaking of finding your way, it's from Mumbai to New York City.
Yes.
Though they say the cities are very similar, they also can be quite dissimilar. Did you get like a culture shock in terms of, work environments, in terms of societal cultures, and how did you navigate that?
It's a very interesting question because the view we have of US is obviously it's a very large country, very progressive, and all of that is true. That being said, for me, because I moved about 7 years ago, uh, I was 48, so closer to the 50 mark. I think what I realized very quickly, even though I got the opportunity to work with a company like Charles Schwab, I realized that US and the financial markets, it's a very insular sort of a market where if you are from that ecosystem right from the very beginning, it's easier to get up to those senior roles. For example, I met very recently the COO of a very large financial company, and that has been his first job right since he finished his undergrad. And today he is the global COO of that company, which meant that, he came from within the system. So I have found it very challenging to break into the senior leadership roles. Uh, and like I said, I love to challenge status quo. So it's very important to understand what the challenges are, but then quickly pivoted. I said, let me pivot to my strength. And what is my strength? My strength is knowing the Indian markets, but I'm in the US India corridor today, which is probably one of the most important investment corridors. If you look at both India and US, and the markets. These are probably the only two consistently performing markets. Both India and US are transparent. We've seen consistent returns, and hence I think the corridor is one that is important and will have even more importance as we go forward. So then I started to focus on my entrepreneurial skills, which is my strength, and build cross-border investing platforms that will, enable us to surface the opportunity that actually exists.
Was there a moment that you felt during the course of your career like, maybe this is not me? Maybe the challenges seemed unsurmountable. Did you ever go through that phase, and how did you push through from there?
Eric, I think that's perhaps the most important question. One I think most women, and I'm sure you as well, grapple with um, many times in my life. And because I don't know if I should say I've had the opportunity or whatever that may be. I've worked mostly with men. I've actually never worked with a woman in my entire career.
Seriously.
Absolutely. So not only did I mean, sometimes, although let me tell you, I worked with phenomenal people and I've had great fun with them.
Yeah.
That being said, there were many times where, you feel like you're a misfit, especially if they're on a boys' trip and things like that. But more importantly, Erica, and I think this is what needs to change, is I often almost feel like I'm a misfit even amongst my women friends. Back then, let's say 25 years ago, you sometimes feel misunderstood. Very different priorities because I'm a working woman and I'm not taking care of my kid full time. Or so you feel misunderstood, judged for who you are. And I think that to me, was difficult to sort of navigate through. I actually recall one incident where we were interviewing for our daughter's school admission. And one of the trustees on the board was a woman. And while interviewing, she actually asked me, do you work? And I said, yes. And she said, well, we prefer women who are at home.
Are you serious?
Yes. So that coming from a woman,
This was in India, or
this was in India.
right?
That coming from a woman was surprising.
Did you kind of ask her, what's the context of that question, or why do we, why?
So actually, I mean, I'm conscious that this is for my daughter's school admission.
Okay.
In normal circumstances, I would have probably challenged her, but I think I just decided to, and I think that is the key. The key is to be authentically you. Don't play the victim. Just be yourself. And I told her honestly that I'm from a family where my mother was a homemaker, as opposed to I see my husband who comes from a family of, both working parents. And I think my mother-in-law has done a great job, even as a working parent. In fact, if I may say so, perhaps in a different way, a better job at raising that child. So I don't see any difference. So I don't see how my working status affects my ability to be a good mother. And so, you answer that authentically, and or you take on life's situations authentically. I think man or woman, gender aside, we need to be authentically ourselves. And as long as you know that you're on the right path, you're living a path of purpose and creating value, which is very important for me, whether it's at work, be it in my family or with friends. As long as I sleep well at night, knowing that I'm doing my best, I think it's okay. And I just don't think we should play the woman card or the victim. It doesn't serve any purpose.
Right. Well, I wonder if the trustee should have given you a 10 on 10.
Well, Simran had that's my daughter, she had a great experience in that school. And of course, today she studies in Columbia, in New York. She's doing her MBA.
Wow.
And she's thriving. But all of these experiences, I think, only go to build our character.
Absolutely. Speaking of building characters, I think pivot moments, mean a lot when it comes to us making those, decisions which require a lot of courage. You've built businesses from scratch many times, private wealth, capital markets, cross-border platforms. Um, what was your biggest career risk, you think?
Many actually, but as you can see, since I've built businesses, there is that entrepreneurial capability. So within a job, I think I built businesses. So a lot of entrepreneurial stuff that I've done, whether it's wealth management, capital markets, institutional equities, and then a private markets platform. You take on a job and obviously do what's best for the company and what you're asked to do. And early on, I was lucky enough to work with a founder who actually gave me the freedom to build a business without interference. And that was the kind of trust I really valued. That being said, the hardest thing to do is building a business 0 to 1, right? And the moment you build that business from scratch and to a level where it can be scaled up further, you're then asked to go and build the second one. So you hand it over to a team that's going to take it forward. But when you go on to build the next one and so on and so forth, I did not realize the value of the potential of the upside that I'm leaving on the table, handing over that business to a team. And I've done that 4 times over,
Right.
as you can see. So
You should just template it and then copyright it and call it the Sandeepa Vig business
So,
starter.
so that I think not realizing those were some big career risks. Of course, I've been well rewarded financially, and like I said, life works out in the end, and you go with that faith and that belief. Um, but those were big risks, and I think even setting up the business while I lived in New York, again from scratch, not just setting up a business, but rebuilding a life after a thriving career here. Uh, all of I think that has been a massive risk to take. But there's no growth without taking risks.
Yeah, speaking of growth, and
Yes.
like you said, have to, move from Mumbai to New York City, which is again a huge, huge step, pushes anyone out of their comfort zone. So, being uncomfortable and that being tied into growth as a person, talk to us a little bit about that,
Yeah.
pushing yourself out of the comfort zone.
I don't think growth actually comes out of comfort. It's only the painful moments, the discomfort that almost drives you to dig deeper into the situation. And I was, really thriving in my career in Bombay, for example. And I moved to New York actually twice over, once in 2013, just for 1 year. And that time only one variable changed because I moved with my current company. But come 2019, and at that time, my daughter was going through a serious health challenge as well, along with, my husband's job opportunity. I knew that I had to quit. And that was a difficult decision. It took me out of my comfort zone. And I think all human beings are. We are creatures of comfort. We want to be in that zone where we are happy and we're thriving, having built it all. Like I said, having done the hard work, you now want to enjoy the fruits of that hard work. Fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know which way to put it, I've always had to reach a level and then restart. So that for me has been very uncomfortable. But with that, I've also realized that that is what life is. It is unpredictable. And if you don't learn to accept what's coming your way, the more you resist, the harder it gets. So I think it's important to just accept the situation in life. And then when you dig deeper, you realize that growth emerges out of it.
Right. For those women stuck in a trough because of fear, fear of instability, job loss, dwindling bank balances, or whatever the case may be, how do they work themselves out of that? How do they crawl out of that?
It's really tough, Erica. And as a woman, I'm sure you understand that. These are real fears, there are real challenges. Some of us have supportive environments, some of us don't. And it's very difficult to sometimes navigate through situations that can be sometimes even dangerous. Um, but that being said, and I can only speak for myself because that's worked for me, is that um, one is to have belief. If I didn't have that belief, and I'm someone who practices the Buddhist philosophy, so I really dig deep into my spirituality, I think that belief in the bigger picture, knowing that there's something bigger than my current circumstance, situation, uh, and then, once you believe, that belief almost propels you to have hope, and all the debilitating emotions You sort of seem to almost overcome them because you have that kind of belief. It's not easy, but I think that belief propels you to take the next step and the next step. And when you take, one courageous step after another, even though, they say dar ke aage jeet hai. I always remember that ad, beautiful ad. Uh, I think once you take that bold step, in a very cliched way, we've heard this, but the universe does conspire to support you.
I agree. I got to agree. We're going to come to red flags, especially red flags in the workspace, or red flags within, say, financial understandings within the personal sphere as well, between husband, wife, wife and family. If you're a daughter in your family, what are those red flags to kind of watch out for in, that you've sort of come across, managed to pick up on, and perhaps share that wisdom with us?
Sure. And I think I should, there are many. And I think, again, as women, we see it much more, both at home, in workplaces. I think in workplace specifically, the first red flag is the mindset. You're almost penalized for being married, let's say, to a well to do husband or whatever that may be. So that mindset that, you don't need that money. There are people who are breadwinners in this family, you're not. I think that's unfair. That's a big red flag. Being left out of critical meetings, even though you're a very senior person in a position to make decisions, but you're taken to the meetings, but the critical decisions you're excluded from. Or, like I said, trips with clients, or where again you're excluded because they're mostly men, not equivalent stakes, equity stakes that are given to men, board seats, some of these things that you're totally excluded from, or you're not given commensurate to what you deserve. I think those are critical red flags. Um, at home, I think just, being expected to trust the family to do what's right for you. And in most cases, family does want to do what's good for you. That being said, it's not necessary that that actually translates in practical terms. So I think handing over or surrendering your financial, I would say, future over to a family, or the other way around, not knowing what liabilities have been taken on. Let's say you've been named as a director in one of the family businesses and there are liabilities. The woman doesn't even know what she's liable for should things go wrong. These are legal implications, and women don't know. So these are important things to watch out for.
Yeah, so money, power, and patriarchy, right? In the Indian context, and for that matter, you've also been exposed to the American and global markets and global societies. A little bit about your experiences. Yeah,
It's really
I can see you ticking, going.
no, yeah, it's surprising you're asking me that, because when I moved to US, like I said, in my mind I was moving to a country that is obviously very well developed, and you almost expect women to be thinking at a completely different level. Right. While that is true, I've also seen you know contrasting sort of stories living in America. I have seen women who've graduated from, let's say, Yale or a Harvard, having to quit their careers because now they have 3 kids to take care of. You do not have enough, let's say, help or the support like we do in India. And all I've seen women is becoming almost Uber drivers, picking and dropping off kids and so on and so forth.
Well, let's come to financial mistakes. Okay, that women make repeatedly. Uh, you know, give us an example in your line of work, and maybe some tips as to how to avoid it going forward.
Sure. Um, it all begins here, right? It's the mindset. I think maybe because of our cultural conditioning or whatever that may be, I think the mindset itself is finance is too complex. No, it's not. Uh, I think of myself as an average human being. If I can do it, anyone can do it. So I think it's important to first change that mindset that finance is complex. It's not. It's important to have the desire, first of all, to learn.
Yeah.
because the moment knowledge trumps everything, right? It trumps the fact that you don't know this. The moment you have knowledge, you just know, you learn the skill.
Why is it that we have this fear, and mostly women, I think, is it conditioning, social conditioning, whilst we're growing up, in school perhaps, or even importantly within our family sphere, that we're conditioned to believe that it's money, you're a woman, stay away, let the man of the house take care of it, your brother is good enough, your husband should be looking after you, you know that exists, and predominantly so. So, how do we get ourselves to think differently?
You're right, it does exist. Sometimes we don't even think about it. We just accept it as being normal. We normalize it until we see something different. Like I said, for me, it was normal until I went to a boarding school and saw something different. So it could either be that, or you feel like you do not have a choice for whatever the situation in the family may be. Sometimes there is a dominating force that takes over and you feel powerless. It could be either of those. But whatever it may be, I think in some form or manner, the moment you start, I think it's important to make a start. I know it's tough, sometimes it's really tough, but the desire to learn, if we can inculcate that at least for our next generation. If we've not been able to do that, I think it's important to question, how can I do that for my daughter or my child? It doesn't matter, boy or a girl. I think financial literacy is almost a life skill that every single person to have. I don't think we should have a gender around it. Like, it's a life skill. We should all know how to survive and have that self-reliant, independent attitude.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail there. It's not a gender thing, it's a life skill. And the sooner we realize that, the better. This is a very sensitive topic. It's about all your health challenges. You've had some very serious personal health challenges also within your immediate family. A bit about that and how it reflects upon, say, money situations, financial, background, financial stability. How does that interplay work out?
So, health challenges, surprisingly for me, and nobody expects this, right? Again, life is so unpredictable. But the moment I started working, all of my working life has been fraught with health challenges, whether it's for myself or within my family. All of my working life till date. Since the day I turned 24, that's all I've seen. So it's almost a parallel sort of life, work, and dealing with health crises or challenges. So the moment I started my first job, within a few months, I was diagnosed with a benign tumor in my brain, but that required intensive, almost a brain surgery, but years of medication. I was also told I may never have kids. So it was a real challenge that shook me, and that was the first time I realized how critical health is. If you have health, you can pretty much do anything. So my priorities changed completely. I realized if all my faculties are working well, then no challenge can phase me because my perspective shifted, and then health really became a priority. But over the years, like I said, starting from my mother who had breast cancer and I lost her very early, um, lost my dad to cancer. My sister is battling with her third bout of cancer, stage 4 lung cancer. My daughter went through an intense health crisis, which is why I moved to New York. I think having, dealt with it all, there were two realizations. One, of course, that health is very important and life is unpredictable. So, even more important that we should be prepared for any eventuality. God forbid something happens to my family or my husband, and suddenly it feels like life will fall apart. And hence, more important to be self reliant, independent. That was one. Second, I found purpose through my work.
Mm.
So while I was going through very hard times, it almost was like work became my solace. And it drove me harder to achieve at work because I got some sense of relief from there. And luckily, I met with very supportive people at work who really understood, the kind of crises I was going through, deaths, illnesses. It is a lot. Um, so work gave me a purpose. And I know one thing for sure, that I will continue to work Doesn't matter what kind of work. It could be for money, for profit, not for profit, helping people. All of that I do together. But I know that till the day I die, till my faculties are working, I would love to work and contribute to the world in whatever way I can.
So that's fantastic. I think also importantly to understand that in all of that, besides, to support you through the bad times, through the ill health, you need to be financially secure. You need to have those contingency plans in place. So, a little bit about that. Can you share some wisdom about having a little contingency for your plan Bs in case plan A falls apart?
Erica, it's probably the most important thing because, we hear that money is not everything, but it's only people who have it who can afford to say that. So money is important. Uh, it is important, especially from a women's perspective. I see many women, even educated women, whether it's in my personal circle or as a financial advisor to some of these women, even well to do women who hand over decisions about their money to family. I think it's important to take charge. Even if you're not in charge, at least have awareness of the family's financial situation. Where are the assets located? The biggest thing, having your own bank account, some emergency funds in that account that you are operating yourself, right? It's very important. If something happens, where do you get the money? So having a bank account, like I said, learning how to save and then invest. Seek financial advice if you have to. If you don't own property, ensure that the family property is in joint names and know where those properties are, know the financial situations. If you're a director in a company, know what it entails. Are there any loans that have been taken that you're not aware of? God forbid, there are loans that have been taken and there's no insurance. And let's say your spouse passes away, that debt, the onus of that debt is on you, and you may not even be aware. And so these are some of the things one should be mindful of, aware of, and it's important to bring up these conversations in family. These are uncomfortable conversations. Women probably don't even bring up the topic of money.
Forget about that. I think within our friend circle, I mean, within my friends, the moment we say, oh, we start talking about money, it's like, there's almost like a curtain that falls. It's uncomfortable. It's like, don't ask me, but we know that there are these situations going on in their lives. So I think we have to crack that, right? We have to just be a little bit open about, like you said, normalize money talk. You can either come up and say, you know what, I'm so broke this month, man. I really am. So how do I get myself out of this? Or, our assets are dwindling or something like that. I'm just no liquid right now. Oh my God, I need to change my situation. We don't have those conversations yet.
Yes.
I think we need to have those just conversations. It could be as simple as like, where's the best cup of coffee? Now, where's the best place to invest?
Absolutely. And I think if you need a push, talk to a friend who you know can push you do that. Because sometimes it's hard to bring it up. As women, we almost are conditioned not to ask. Even at work, even today, it's difficult for me to ask for what I truly deserve, even today. And that is a conditioning that we must overcome. We see a lot of men fighting legal battles for what, is rightfully theirs. Meanwhile, women even feel, especially women who are homemakers, they're doing such an important job, which is unpaid, right? But they feel almost apologetic asking for money. Why? We need to normalize that because, whatever you're doing, whether it's at home or outside, it comes with tremendous amount of hard work. But the lack of self-worth is what prevents us. Women, it really prevents us from asking for what we truly deserve.
So this life skill, how are you passing it on to your daughter?
All the time. I mean, I am constantly telling. In fact, she opposes it because same thing. Mom, I do not understand. She's done her undergrad in liberal arts, and she constantly says, "Mom, I don't understand." But I think, like I said, first and foremost, it's that self-reliant, independent mindset. That was the mindset I was brought up with by my mother. She always told me, God forbid something goes wrong with your marriage, you should never be in a marriage because you're financially dependent. It should be your choice. Staying power equates to choice, not because you're forced to do so because you're financially dependent. So I think that's the first mindset that, I have drilled into her as well. That's number one. Following from that independent mindset is obviously she's working, she's earning her own money, but earning does not equate to being financially independent, because now you need to learn how to save, how to invest. Again, you need knowledge that could be very complex and you're not even thinking about it, and you realize years later I haven't saved any money. So it's savings is very important, and then learning how to invest is very important. Having a lifestyle versus having assets, how do you build wealth? So assets over lifestyle, the only way to generate long-term wealth is to build assets. And like you said, my husband and I both came from nothing. We have no legacy. We built it ourselves on these fundamental principles. If we understand the most simple principle, the power of compounding, for example, that power alone, even if you invest small sums of money monthly or annually, it can lead to a big pie over a long period of time. I'll give you an example. 1 lakh rupees invested over 30 years, and let's say it's earning 15% every year. At the end of 30 years, it's at 66 lakhs. That's the power of compounding. If we only sit down to understand the simple power of investing, and investing can be very simple. And even if we don't know, today we have the access to advisors. I mean, I may know a lot about financial markets, but even I seek advice. So it's not difficult to do some of these things. Advice is available, knowledge is available. I think it boils down to, are you up to it?
Right. The intent.
Yeah.
You have to find the intent. I think it's also for your own personal, grounding, your own personal, stability. So important to be powerful, to feel powerful and empowered when you're financially secure. Very
Absolutely.
important. Do you remember the first paycheck you got? What did you spend it on?
The first paycheck was very empowering for me, because I remember that paycheck was 18,000 rupees in 1995 from my first job. And I wanted to just spend it all on gifts for my family, on myself. And I think that was the moment I realized the power of money as not just money, but it gives you the power to choose. All my life, I lived with probably 3 or 4 pairs of clothes. And I went and bought myself, it may sound very trivial and amusing, but I went and bought myself, a bunch of clothes and, of course, gifts for my family. And that's when I realized that I have the power to choose the moment and I don't need permission. This is my money. I can choose to do what I want to do with it, and I can create whatever I want to do with it.
Yeah. In one of our conversations off mic, you said that you also are very passionate about fashion. So, are you happy with that decision to go, into the finance sphere as opposed to fashion? And are you in a position now to sort of, make them both meet?
I hope so, but it's funny you bring that up, because um, once my dad came around to the fact that I wanted to work, after that he was extremely supportive. In fact, he went the other way, where when I told him that, Dad, I want to become a fashion designer, and back then these were not careers that were so prevalent and popular. He said, "Tum darzi banogi." Dad, fashion designing does not equate to tailoring.
Yeah.
But he said, no, I mean, look at your academic track record. You're so intelligent. You should become a CA or something like that. I mean, those were the typical professions back then. So I sort of stumbled upon finance as a profession because I went on to do my MBA. And I didn't even know what I wanted to do besides fashion designing back then. And I think I just stumbled upon something that I'm truly passionate about, which is investing. It really drives me. You can wake me up at 4 in the morning and I'll talk about economy and markets and investing. I think I found my passion thanks to my father. And the way I've combined the two is, instead of earning money from clothes, I spend money on clothes.
Yeah. Why not?
Hopefully I can, probably, collab with someone and create a brand, but thus far I haven't.
We're waiting for it, waiting for it. So the whole term quiet power,
Yes.
right? We need to assert ourselves. I wouldn't say, I think assert is a strong word, but then again, why not use it? But just to have that quiet power about us, whether it be in the workspace or in your own relationship, or with your family or extended family, that quiet power.
Women have made great strides all over the world, including India. I mean, we've seen women bankers, such strong women bankers. So women are making great strides. I
Well,
think
our
it's
finance
time.
minister is a woman.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's about time that we started speaking about money freely, without any hesitation, and not just for ourselves, but really empowering the women around us, whether it's our children or it's people in our community. It's about time, Erica.
Yeah, it is about time. It's also time to talk about the future of money and how it's changing rapidly. Hard currency, the notes and now digital, all of that stuff. So, in your sphere of work, talk to us about what the future of money is looking like.
Oh, money can, I mean, I think if I look at overall trends and where we are, going, one trend that's very clear. In fact, I attended a conference in New York just last year, and three trends for this century are emerging. And the biggest of them, one of the biggest trends is India itself. The kind of growth trajectory that this country is on. Today, we are the fourth largest economy in the world and perhaps on track to be the third largest. But more importantly, I think the kind of growth that's taking place both in public markets, private markets, there is tremendous amount of opportunity. We are seeing more and more people become entrepreneurs, women included. So there is that shift towards an ownership mindset, because it's not just entry into a job. It is how can I own a piece of something that's valuable or create something that's valuable. So that's one. And I think there's tremendous opportunity in India itself to make a lot of money and leave a lot of legacy for the next generation. That's one. Number two, of course, is technology. Again, something women are uncomfortable with, myself included.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
So
So, how did you work yourself around that? Because, I mean, technology is everything today, right?
absolutely.
Everything. There's an app for everything.
Every business today is actually a technology
Yes.
business.
What
So
about
it's important to
AI
important-
agents and stuff? It's every business has got,
Absolutely.
all the background is run by
Absolutely.
agentic AI.
So tech is another big trend, and it's important for all of us to embrace it. I myself say tech is complex, but it's not. When I actually started, embracing AI in my own little way, I realized it's not that difficult. So I think that's a big trend, and I think we're seeing women again make great strides. And third is women. That is the third big trend for the century. In fact, globally, the number that is being talked about is there's almost $100 trillion worth of wealth transfer in the next 20 years that's going to take place to women. So women are going to come into this wealth, and a lot of those women don't know what to do with it. So the time really has come for women to step up in the world of not just financial literacy, but taking it to the next level. I think these are the three trends that are going to yield a tremendous amount of opportunities. And it is incumbent upon not just women, but people to, but I think, more women to now put themselves in positions of power. It's not just about being a working woman and things like that, but you need to now, like I said, challenge the status quo, put yourself in positions of power, have an ownership mindset, dream big.
Dream big. What a fantastic way to wrap up this conversation. We got a little more fun things to do, but I think this is a serendipity. I almost felt it. The universe brought us together to have this conversation. Okay, are you ready for a rapid fire? Okay, let's see how you do.
I hope
Come on, Sandeepa. Let's start. One money myth women must drop.
complex. It's not complex. Trust me, it's not. It's very simple. All you need to do is put some time into it.
That's right. Ka-ching, ka-ching.
Uh-huh.
One financial habit every woman should build.
Take charge of your own money. Invest, invest, invest. Even if you make mistakes.
One thing money can't buy.
Health.
Health. Yeah. I don't know about that. One word that defines your journey.
Thinking big. Fighting status quo. If I hadn't, fought the status quo, I wouldn't be where I am today.
I'm going to ask you for some actionable tips
Mhm.
for women. So just, three that you can think of to so women can do something very simple every single day to improve their financial literacy.
Yes, very important question, Erica. And I think it's the need of the hour, starting with changing the mindset, which we've talked about enough. And I can't drive that home enough, which is why I'm repeating it. Changing the mindset that it is complex to it's not that difficult. Seek advice, seek knowledge if you have to. But the first thing we need to do is start to learn, start to invest. That's number one. Number two, very important, have your own bank account. Everything begins from a bank account. There's no transaction. I mean, even GPay is linked to your bank account, right? So there is nothing that you can do without a bank account. But it's important to also have an independent bank account that only you have control over, and make sure that there's always some funds for emergency in that bank account. So that's number two. And number three, I think it's time to sit down with our families and have the conversations about money and build an awareness of where is the family in terms of, financial assets. What is my role in it? How can I be a part of value creation as opposed to just sitting passively and trusting that, I'll get. So I think that's important. I mean, most daughters are, I would say, penalized, myself included, for having well to do husbands. But just because I have a well to do husband, principally, why can't I have an equal stake in family's wealth? So I think it's important to now ask for what is rightfully yours from a principal's, standpoint. So I think these are the three things that would be top of my mind. Many other things, and we can talk about that much more, but I think three most important things.
Yeah. Fantastic. This is such a great conversation. Thank you so much. And
Thank
we
you,
got so
Erica.
much to learn from it. I'm going to say good luck with everything going forward. I know it's been quite a journey for you, but what a fantastic journey. And here you are. So congratulations and thank you for being our very first guest on our very first season of Project W, Women, Wealth and Wisdom. Sandeepa, thank you.
It's been an honor. Thank you very much.
So, if this conversation made you pause, reflect, or rethink your relationship with money, then it's already done its job. At Project W, we believe money conversations shouldn't be whispered, they should be shared, they should be questioned, they should be normalized. So, here's how you can be part of this movement. First, please share this episode with one woman who needs to hear this today: a friend, sister, colleague, daughter, or even a mentor. Second, send us your story, your first salary moment, your biggest financial mistake, your proudest money win, or even your biggest money fear. Trust me, we read every single message we get, and many of these stories will, in fact, shape our future episodes. And third, drop your questions and your comments. What do you want us to talk about next? Could it be investing? Could it be inheritance, career, money moves, financial independence after marriage, starting over after divorce? Whatever. You can find us on all social media platforms. It's Project W by Mahamoney. And yes, your voice matters here. And finally, if you're listening to this and thinking, I want to be in rooms where these conversations happen live, well, stay tuned because Project W is more than just a podcast. It's evolving into a platform, into a community of women who will shape decisions and the future of money in India. Until next time, ask better questions, claim your financial power, gain your wisdom, and remember, wealth isn't just what you earn, it's what you own, what you control, and importantly, what you choose. I'm Erica. This is Project W, Women, Wealth, Wisdom. See you in the next conversation.